this idea of, look, you can track your pizza at Domino's. If you can track the pizza delivery at Domino's, I should be able to track my insurance claim in a similar, easy way.
Hey, Jason, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Maybe for the sake of the audience, we can do quick intros. So why don't you take it away?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Jason Barrow, partner of Bain, founder of the NPS Prism business. Excited to be here today.
Awesome. And I'm Max LaFortune, Director of Strategy and Ops for NPS Prism, and also happen to play a part in authoring this report. So it has a special place in my heart.
Yes, you did. There you go. Yeah, so why don't we start there? Talk about what that process was like. Where did this come from? Why did we decide to do this now?
Well, I guess the short answer here is that a lot of our clients have been asking for it. What does good look like in this industry, or what should we be thinking about that is not immediately obvious in insurance, but is happening in streaming? And so, given those requests, we figured it's actually really useful to be able to put together a leaderboard, not just for a given industry, but across a set of industries. So that's what this is.
One of the other nice things, obviously, about the report is we start to do a little of the storytelling within some of those industries. Like there are things that the folks at the top of the leaderboard are doing that is better. Consumer cellular, we were just talking about that one. Like, they have chosen their niche in phones, basically doing mobile phones for the seniors and doing it super well.
It's always the question, what's our core competitive set? Who should we be actually benchmarking against, right?
Right. And I used to have this debate, I've been doing this for 20 years. I used to have this debate all the time with clients. It's like, are we ahead or behind? And then they would just narrow the competitor set until they were finally winning. And, it's like, well, okay. And I always bring it back to, and it's one of the pieces of data that we have in Prism, is are you swapping customers with that company? Yes or no? And if you are, you're competing with them, even if their model is different than yours. Mm-hmm. And so if you're a mainline bank losing customers to a Chime, you're sort of competing with Chime.
Right.
And you can decide whether or not the customers that are going to them are customers that you care about a lot or not. But you can't narrow the competitor set too much to the point where you're ignoring real players who are taking real share.
Yeah, absolutely. If we think about disputes, I feel like consumers aren't always thinking about, well, what are disputes like in banking? They think, what does great look like, across my interactions day to day? And if the best dispute handling is in streaming, then I want everything to be like that.
No, it's exactly right. And customers define their definition of easy off of easy. And they know what easy is. Mm-hmm. They know if, and there are some industries where, you can check a status of something with 2 swipes of the thumb. They know that's true. And they know that if they have to check the stat, like if you're insurance and you have to check the status of a claim, and doing it involves 2 phone calls and, somebody sending you a letter, that that's not good because you've done this before. This is always, the sort of the example that people like to give colloquially is this idea of, look, you can track your pizza at Domino's. If you can track the pizza delivery at Domino's, I should be able to track my insurance claim in a similar, easy way. But it's this idea of not having to do it at the level of the market becomes really easy. It becomes clarifying. And this is true across industries, that what sets the good customer companies apart is that they both say yes super fast and they say no super nicely. Is the way to think about it. And it's the understanding that it's not just about saying yes all the time. There are definitely banks, like Navy Federal is at the top of our list in banking. One of the things they do super well is they say no super nicely. They're not saying yes a lot more than anybody else does, but their customers are super happy with the no's, is the way. And so it's exactly the type, and we see that in what sets good telco companies apart, what sets good insurance companies apart, what sets good banks apart, what sets good anything apart, is that they handle disputes. They both make the volume go down, and then when they happen, they're less painful.
Yeah, and in some industries, if you can do that digitally and not actually have to wait to talk to someone, even better, and
It,
presumably lower cost for
it's
the
true.
provider as well. Makes
It's
sense.
true. I will tell you the other cross industry theme that I've been talking about a lot, and I'm sure if we looked at our leaders and the leaderboards, what the good customer companies are figuring out is where to do things digitally, but
Yeah.
also where not to do them digitally.
Mm-hmm.
And this question of it's not uniform. You want to digitize routine things. You want to digitize sales things, but you don't want to digitize disputes and
Right.
you don't want to digitize advice. A lot of times the math shows up in a banking client, it shows up in customers who would have quit but didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to sort of figure out where in the company's P&L those customers are.
Right.
How do
Yeah.
you know who they were? And so how do you account for it in sort of a real way? And so, but that really is, in a sense, the thought experiment of what's going on, that we are going to invest in things today and in experiences that will make it less likely that our customers will quit us tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, how do you get your head around, well, it was worth doing? You need some of this type of outside in data because it's that leap on we're going to get the return on spending the money today, and that return is going to come in better net retention a year from now, 2 years from now.
Yeah. And ultimately greater customer lifetime value, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a retained customer is worth a lot more than a customer you have to go win next year.
Yeah.
Like that's at the heart of NPS ultimately, is that you're better off keeping your existing customer base and having them bring their friends with them. That is
Yeah.
a much more profitable way to run a business almost of any kind.
Yeah. Makes sense. So I guess, maybe thinking a little bit ahead here, for customers who are interested in understanding a little bit more about what's driving these trends. Obviously this report gives a great sense for who's winning and what is the range of score in industry, but where do companies go from here, and how do they use this to their advantage?
Yeah, so it's twofold. I think one, for companies where we're already sitting on their data, they can reach out to us and we can have a conversation very quickly as to what is the data saying, and if you had access to this type of data, what would you do with it? And so
Yeah.
that we are now sitting on a fairly wide range of industries and countries where that first conversation can actually be quite insights related because we're already sitting on the data. And then
Yeah.
there are obviously some conversations which were a bit more complicated because the first conversation is going to be, do we have their data? And the answer is no,
Right.
but we could. And so for some of these clients, it becomes more of a longer term, we're all agreeing that we're going to go build something new together.
Yeah.
And they will have their data, but not tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so so those conversations take two different flavors. But why one of the reasons that we put out the report now is that we're sitting on enough data now across a wide enough range of companies that for a lot of the conversations that we want to have, we're actually sitting on something that's relevant and we can talk to tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks often ask me, what's different or better about your product than other solutions on the market, and I feel like not only the depth of insight and the ability for us to answer not just the what, but the why, and what do the drivers say about how to improve. In addition to just the longitudinal nature of our data, we've got many quarters now across industries, so we can track not just point in time but over time. Feels like a huge differentiator for us.
Yeah, that's how it's starting to feel for sure, and it's one of the reasons why we want to keep doing more things like this.
Yeah.
So talk to us about what's coming next from your seat. Are we going to put out more of this stuff? Sort of how often do you want to be putting things out? What do you think they're going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, given the reception to this particular piece, I think the answer is definitely yes. We'll be doing more of this. I think the tricky question now is where to next. We've got, as you say, a host of different industries. We cover many different geographies. We'll obviously want to keep this piece up to date, a couple times a year. But then, as in terms of other options, we can look at perhaps a given industry, but look at it across the globe and see what can we learn, in banking from other geographies, for example, or across products even. So lots of interesting possibilities here, and safe to say that we'll be doing more of it.
Yeah, no, super exciting. And I agree. I like the cross country one. I have
Yeah.
that conversation with clients all the time, by the way. And it's interesting how I know you're Canadian. Our Canadian our Canadian clients, it's interesting the difference between Canadian banking and insurance and U.S. banking and insurance, and it's a conversation that comes up a lot. Very large differences, and how differentiated the big companies are, big differences, and whether or not things have moved to digital and at what speed and what pace. I find it's actually fascinating to look at sort of where all the various countries are, and do we think that all of the countries are headed towards the same place, or are they heading towards different places in the long run?
No, I can remember moving to Seattle and thinking, what do you mean there's more than a handful of banks? And why can't I use my PIN and tap my card and all that kind of stuff? That's obviously come a long way since. But yeah, it is funny for countries that are similar in so many ways how banking systems are actually quite different.
Yeah. But we now have a lot of that view. And as you said, a lot of the time series on it, which I think a lot of the banking clients are finding quite helpful. Sort of gives them a sense of how fast can things move, and sort of speaks to how worried should they be about particular trends, and if the trend is happening in other countries but not in ours yet, what should we do about it?
Yeah.
And some of those things are coming up. This comes up with our insurance clients. One of the big conversations we have all the time is how fast should we be digitizing claims experiences?
Absolutely.
And most countries around the world don't do it very much because it doesn't work very well. But it's still the big thing that's sitting out there, where there are lots of phone calls, and it's not clear if there always should be forever. And so it's one of these where different countries are really at different places along the learning curve of that. And I think a lot of the lessons for our clients are going to come from other geographies.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. I was looking into that exact thing for insurance in the US versus Germany the other day, and it's true, you can kind of see what the future can look like in different markets who may be a little more nascent in terms of digital rollout by looking across regions.
Yeah.
Very
cool. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Well, I guess
maybe
one more question, but I was curious, when you saw the report, was there anything that surprised you, or perhaps, that confirmed your prior beliefs when you saw the results?
Well, obviously I knew the data a lot. So I think it was, I think I knew what the answers were. I think what's most surprising to me about these things is that there really are wide ranges within industries.
Yeah.
There really are, it's interesting to me that there really are choices that are 40, 50 points of NPS better than a lot of what are actually some fairly large companies.
Yeah.
And I always have this, and I always find it interesting how, obviously it differs across markets, how quickly customers, I always describe it as how, customers will find their way to happiness.
Yeah.
That's the way that I typically describe it. And you're either going to find it within the company. Right. There's sort of a bumpy road, but sometimes the path to happiness is you switch where you're doing business. And one of the interesting things is just how wide the range is within any one of these industries. You really, people who are, banking at a place at NPS 10, you can go have an NPS 50 experience. All you have to do is walk down the street and open an account. Yeah. And so it's interesting, sort of that gaps of that size are allowed to persist for a really long time. And, I think it's both interesting, but I think it creates lots of opportunities. It's both opportunities for the folks who are leading, and it speaks to, the urgency for the folks who are further away from the places that they're competing with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it makes me think of the first time I sent money digitally after moving to the US and feeling like, wow, it's that simple.
Exactly.
Which was not always the case for me. So I, it's not lost on me that is a good experience, even though I've done it a million times since.
Right. It's sort of interesting. And I've had customer experiences like that in my life where I've finally gotten away, is sort of the way that it feels.
Yeah.
But that is the thing that I find most interesting. And again, they're not all playing exactly the same game. So there are obviously reasons that some folks don't switch. But I do find it interesting that companies that are essentially serving the same underlying need can do it in dramatically different ways, which
Yeah.
I find, and again, that differs across countries. We'll see in some of the countries, the span from top to bottom is going to be a lot smaller.
Yeah.
Is one of the interesting things. In the US, it's like there's more choice sort of everywhere, which is, I think it's good.
Yeah.
It's good for consumers at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah, it sort of seems like in deeper markets with broader competitive sets, often you're seeing that bigger range just by virtue of more players, and therefore more models that they're kind of trying to take on.
If you want to go invent something new, go find the pocket of very unhappy customers who would love an alternative, and go create something new and create that path for them. And that's definitely a path to high growth across a wide variety of markets.
Yeah. I'll have to see if I can find some unhappy customers and see what would make them happy.
There you go.
Well, thanks so much. This has been great to chat with you, and obviously we're excited to see where this goes. I think there's more to be done and more to come.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for your work on it. This is terrific. Look forward to seeing more of this.
Great. It's been
catching
fun.
Up, Max.
See ya.
Yeah, absolutely. See you later. Bye.